Did you know that thousands of families risk everything every year just to chase a dream of a better life? In 2008, one of them was a 10-year-old boy named Jorge. Standing at the Mexico-U.S. border, Jorge tightly held his parents' hands, their faces glowing with hope. By 2009, they settled into a cozy home in San Diego, where Jorge quickly made friends from all backgrounds. In school, by 2012, he proudly embraced both his Mexican and American identities, excelling academically. At his high school graduation in 2016, the future seemed bright. By age 25, Jorge was working construction, building beautiful buildings in Los Angeles. Soon, he married and became the proud father of 2 children, living the American dream. But one night in 2024, a sudden knock changed everything. Immigration officers stood at his door. In court, a single word destroyed his life: deportation. Jorge said a painful goodbye to his crying family at the airport, forced back to Mexico, a country he barely remembered. Today, at 27, Jorge stands alone, gazing across the horizon toward the distant silhouette of the U.S., longing for the family and life he left behind. His story is just one among thousands. How many more must be shattered before the world notices? We have set up an artificial intelligence to explore the question of whether the United States should restrict immigration to preserve its national identity. Today, we will have a structured debate involving 2 sides, one advocating for stricter immigration controls and one opposing them. Here's how our debate will proceed. Opening statements. Each side will present its main position. Argument development. Both sides will expand on their key points with facts and examples. Rebuttals. Participants will challenge each other's assertions and address perceived weaknesses. Q&A. The moderator or audience will pose questions for further clarification. Don't skip ahead. Watch the entire exchange and decide for yourself in the comments who made the stronger argument. If you're interested in the topic of debates, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and take part in the subscriber-only poll to help determine the winner.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow debaters, and esteemed moderator, thank you for gathering to consider whether the United States should restrict immigration to preserve its national identity. While our nation rightfully celebrates its history as a land of opportunity for newcomers, we must also recognize that an excessive or poorly managed influx of people can pose significant challenges to our social fabric and shared values. When we speak of national identity, we refer to the common ideals, traditions, and civic principles that unite us as Americans, values embedded in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, such as individual liberty, democratic governance, and equal opportunity. Over the years, immigrants have indeed strengthened these ideals, bringing diverse perspectives and talents. However, when too many arrive too quickly, local communities may struggle to provide adequate education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Such strains can hinder assimilation, create tensions, and ultimately chip away at the sense of unity that defines American society. Advocating for stricter immigration controls does not mean slamming the door on those in need, nor does it negate our proud history of welcoming the persecuted and oppressed. Rather, it reflects a necessary balance between extending opportunity and maintaining the stability of our institutions. By setting thoughtful limits and promoting robust assimilation efforts, we can help newcomers fully embrace American values while preventing undue pressure on public services and job markets. In essence, supporting immigration restrictions is not a rejection of diversity. It is a recognition that every nation must consider the pace and scale at which it grows. By moderating the flow of newcomers and ensuring they share our core principles, we can preserve the very identity that has long made the United States a beacon of hope for people around the world. Thank you, and I look forward to exploring these issues further during our debate.
The concept of national identity is not a static construct. It evolves over time, shaped by the contributions of different cultures, perspectives, and innovations. History shows that the United States itself was built on the efforts of those who arrived from distant shores in search of liberty, prosperity, and opportunity. Undermining the core principle through tighter restrictions would mean disregarding the nation's founding legacy and limiting its future potential. Restricting immigration in the belief that it threatens our common values ignores the reality that these values, freedom of expression, equal opportunity, and the pursuit of happiness, are precisely what draw newcomers to our borders. By embracing diversity, the nation remains a dynamic tapestry where respect for human rights, democratic ideals, and the rule of law thrive. Indeed, it is often immigrants who revitalize local communities, catalyze economic growth, and enrich cultural life. Blocking such a vital source of renewal and creativity risks stagnation, both economically and socially. Moreover, fears about strain on social services or dilution of cultural norms are best addressed through robust integration programs and equitable resource allocation, not by shutting the door on individuals and families seeking a better life. An inclusive approach acknowledges our interconnected world and reflects the compassion and openness that have long been among America's defining traits. By welcoming those who bring new perspectives and talents, the United States can continue to evolve, staying true to the spirit of liberty and opportunity that has drawn people here for centuries. I look forward to exploring these points further and demonstrating that preserving our national identity is not about exclusion, but rather about embracing change and living up to the ideals that have always made America a beacon of hope.
Building on the foundation laid out in my opening speech, I would now like to provide a more detailed examination of the arguments supporting the position that the United States should adopt a more restrictive immigration policy to preserve its national identity. These arguments focus on four primary considerations: cultural cohesion, economic impact, national security, and the integrity of American values. First, a cohesive society depends on a shared sense of identity and mutual understanding. In the United States, that sense of identity stems from a combination of historical documents, civic traditions, and a commonly understood social contract. While it is true that cultural variety has enriched American life, uncontrolled or poorly managed immigration can make the challenging process of assimilation even more difficult. When newcomers arrive in large numbers, without robust support structures or incentives to integrate, linguistic and cultural barriers can create fragmented communities, leading to miscommunication and social friction. By instituting sensible immigration limits, we enable both existing and new residents to adjust to one another more effectively. This does not mean erasing diversity. Rather, it promotes healthy, productive interaction in which everyone can learn and grow within a cohesive national framework. Second, there is the question of economics. Advocates of open or minimally restrictive policies often emphasize the contributions that immigrants make to the labor force and the broader economy. Undeniably, immigrants can fill important roles in various industries, from agriculture to technology. However, an unregulated influx can place additional stress on public services, housing, education, and healthcare systems, especially if the incoming population does not possess the skills or training needed to thrive in a competitive job market. Consider, for example, underfunded school districts that struggle to accommodate surges in enrollment, or hospitals in low-income areas overwhelmed by the expanding need for care. A more restrictive, strategically crafted immigration policy would allow the nation to attract skilled workers while giving local communities time to adapt, thereby preserving the quality of public services for everyone. Third, national security is an integral part of a stable national identity. The processes by which we vet incoming immigrants and refugees are crucial for preventing the entry of individuals who may pose a threat to public safety. Lax or inconsistent immigration policies can leave gaps for criminal elements or potential terrorists to slip through. While no system can guarantee absolute security, implementing stricter admission criteria, thorough background checks, and clearer pathways to citizenship can significantly reduce potential risks. Securing our borders more effectively and enforcing existing laws should not be seen as turning our backs on legitimate refugees or asylum seekers. Rather, it is a measure designed to protect all Americans, both native-born citizens and law-abiding immigrants alike, from those who might exploit a weaker system. Finally, we must address the importance of preserving the founding ideals that define America. These include individual liberty, democratic governance, and the rule of law. When immigration is rapid and insufficiently regulated, the delicate process of cultural transmission can be interrupted. Successful assimilation involves more than just learning the language. It requires adopting the ethical and civic principles that make our society function. A prudent set of immigration controls ensures that newcomers join our community in a manner that respects and reinforces these shared values, rather than undermining or diluting them. This approach helps maintain the core identity that has allowed the United States to remain a beacon of freedom and opportunity. In summary, restricting immigration to preserve national identity is not a retreat from America's long-standing tradition of welcoming newcomers. Instead, it is a pragmatic approach designed to balance our capacity for compassion and innovation with the critical need for stability and unity. By paying close attention to the cultural, economic, and security implications of immigration, we can craft policies that uphold the values that make America unique, while ensuring that new arrivals become active and harmonious participants in our national story.
Having laid out the foundational perspective that restricting immigration in the name of national identity runs counter to both American history and core values, let us now delve into 4 key arguments that further illustrate why such restrictions are not only unnecessary but potentially detrimental to the future of the United States: the evolving nature of identity, economic advancement, humanitarian obligations, and the power of inclusive civic engagement. The idea of a monolithic national identity ignores the deeply pluralistic fabric that defines America. From the earliest colonial settlements to the modern era, each wave of newcomers has added new layers to the country's cultural and social landscape. Far from eroding a shared identity, this continuous flow of perspectives and traditions has, over time, shaped a dynamic American ethos rooted in freedom and resilience. Attempting to freeze that ethos by closing borders or imposing severe limits on immigration overlooks the inherent adaptability of American society. In fact, the continued vitality of the nation depends on its ability to integrate new influences rather than fear them. By fostering an inclusive environment, we ensure that the concept of being American remains expansive rather than restrictive. A second major point centers on the economic benefits of open, or at least moderate, immigration policies. While some claim that newcomers place undue strain on social services or compete unfairly in job markets, the broader evidence suggests that immigrant communities often become key contributors to innovation and growth. High-skilled immigrants drive cutting-edge research, start successful businesses, and enrich the STEM fields. Meanwhile, immigrants also fill essential roles in agriculture, healthcare, and other industries, sustaining vital economic sectors that might otherwise suffer from labor shortages. Importantly, small businesses launched by immigrants generate employment opportunities not just for other new arrivals, but for native-born citizens as well. By welcoming a steady influx of global talent, the United States can maintain its competitive edge and continue to lead in an increasingly interconnected world. A profound moral dimension must also be considered. The United States has long positioned itself as a refuge for those fleeing persecution, poverty, or violence. While there must be reasonable procedures to ensure security and proper documentation, severely restricting immigration often punishes individuals who seek protection or a chance at a better life. Turning away people in dire circumstances contradicts the values championed by the nation's founding documents, especially the ethos of liberty and justice for all. It is vital to remember that many of the brightest innovators and most dedicated workers arrived in America as refugees or asylum seekers. By welcoming them, we not only uphold moral principles but also enhance our society's cultural and economic vibrancy. Some proponents of immigration restrictions argue that large-scale migration risks weakening civic cohesion. However, strong civic engagement does not stem from homogeneity. It emerges when people of diverse backgrounds unite under shared principles of democracy and equality. In communities across the country, immigrants participate in local governance, contribute to civic organizations, and serve in the military. They embrace the responsibilities of citizenship as readily as the rights it confers. Ensuring that immigrants have accessible pathways to integration, such as language classes, orientation programs, and clear routes to naturalization, builds stronger ties among residents. This, in turn, fortifies national unity. Seeking to protect American identity by limiting outside influence underestimates the resilience and inclusivity of that very identity. In reality, a democracy grows stronger when more individuals are empowered to participate in its institutions. None of this is to say that immigration policies should be completely without structure or oversight. Sensible regulations and effective border management are essential for any nation. However, blanket restrictions or severe cuts to legal immigration pathways risk undermining the foundations on which the United States was built. History reminds us that each new wave of arrival has contributed to the national mosaic, expanding freedoms and ensuring continued progress. By adopting an approach that emphasizes integration rather than exclusion, the country can stay true to its heritage and remain a global example of democracy, liberty, and opportunity. Ultimately, what genuinely preserves America's national identity is not shutting doors, but keeping them open to those willing to share in its enduring promise. Through education, civic involvement, and the continued enforcement of just and reasonable regulations, the United States can uphold its values and pass on a vibrant, inclusive society to future generations.
The against side asserts that national identity is naturally fluid and strengthened by diversity. We agree that America's identity has been shaped by immigrants across generations. However, we contend that there is a threshold beyond which rapid demographic change may undermine the very cohesion that allows America to flourish. A society must have sufficient time and resources to integrate newcomers effectively. Linguistic, cultural, and civic assimilation cannot occur overnight. By placing sensible limits on immigration, we allow communities to engage in structured assimilation that enriches America's identity without fracturing it. The danger lies not in the presence of diversity, but in an overwhelming influx that local schools, social services, and civic institutions may be ill-equipped to handle. The notion that any restriction will freeze national identity is a false dichotomy. In truth, measured policies protect the adaptability the U.S. has always prized. It is true that many immigrants, including high-skilled workers, have contributed to America's economic leadership. Yet, we must also consider the reality that not every newcomer arrives with in-demand skills, nor do all communities have the same capacity to absorb the costs associated with surging populations. Claims of widespread economic benefit often overlook the uneven distribution of labor needs and the fact that certain local job markets become saturated. In lower-income areas, an influx of workers can create heightened competition for employment, keeping wages depressed. Moreover, sudden population growth strains public resources, from education to healthcare, faster than taxpayers can fund them. A more restrictive immigration policy does not aim to cut off all potential talent. Rather, it refines the process to align newcomers with industries facing genuine labor shortages, ensuring that both immigrants and native-born workers can benefit from balanced economic development. The U.S. has a proud history of aiding individuals fleeing persecution. However, it is also the government's responsibility to ensure that such assistance does not compromise social stability or drain resources in a way that harms both existing residents and newcomers. Overwhelmed systems help no one. A chaotic entry process can leave individuals in limbo, sow misunderstanding, and incite local backlash. By instituting robust but fair immigration vetting, complete with clear pathways for genuine refugees, we can uphold our moral obligations without allowing the system to collapse under excessive demand. Compassion must operate in tandem with pragmatism. Rather than viewing immigration limits as a rejection of humanitarian values, we see them as a structured approach that safeguards resources and ensures more meaningful support for those who do arrive. The opposing side correctly notes that successful integration hinges on welcoming civic institutions, language programs, and pathways to citizenship. We do not deny that immigrants can be active, engaged citizens when given the opportunity. The real question is whether the current pace of immigration allows for responsible assimilation. Overwhelmed municipal governments and underfunded school systems often struggle to provide such essential integration services. If our nation truly wants to promote robust civic participation, we must be prepared to invest in these critical support systems, an investment that becomes increasingly difficult with constant, high-volume immigration. By moderating the influx, we can better provide resources for language acquisition, job training, and civic education, ultimately empowering new arrivals to become fully contributing members of society. In conclusion, the call for tighter immigration regulations is not a denial of America's immigrant heritage. Rather, it is a pragmatic stance that seeks to protect our national identity, ensure social and economic stability, and maintain a functioning system that can meaningfully support newcomers. Balancing moral obligations with finite resources is not an abandonment of American ideals, but a necessary step to preserve them. If we fail to address the practical limits of integration, we risk eroding social cohesion and straining public services, ultimately undermining the very principles of opportunity and freedom that have long defined the United States. By pursuing a moderate but firm approach, we secure a sustainable future in which both existing residents and new arrivals can thrive.
While the pro side's concerns about cohesion, economic pressures, security, and core values should not be dismissed outright, we believe their conclusions underestimate both the adaptability of American institutions and the benefits of embracing new arrivals. Below, we respond to each of their main arguments in turn. 1. Cultural cohesion and integration. The pro side warns that rapid changes in demographics can overwhelm communities, leading to fragmentation and strained public services. However, this view overlooks America's proven capacity for integration over centuries of sustained immigration. Large urban centers, from New York in the 19th century to Houston in the present, have repeatedly absorbed diverse populations, fostering economic growth and cultural innovation rather than social breakdown. Yes, integration can be challenging, but the solution lies in investing in language programs, community-building initiatives, and local institutions that welcome newcomers rather than in turning people away at the border. The American experience teaches us that new arrivals, when given proper support, strengthen our shared identity by revitalizing neighborhoods and contributing their unique cultural and professional skills. 2. Economic stability and resource allocation. Proponents of restrictions often caution that immigrants, especially those with fewer formal qualifications, may burden public services or lower wages. While these concerns may arise in specific contexts, the broader economic evidence points to net benefits when immigrants join the workforce, pay taxes, and start businesses. In fact, America's dynamic labor market needs a range of skill sets, from advanced degrees in tech and engineering to essential roles in agriculture, construction, and caregiving. Immigrants fill these gaps, which not only stimulates growth but also helps maintain global competitiveness. Rather than limiting immigration outright, we can design policies that channel skilled newcomers into industries experiencing shortages and expand support structures for those transitioning to new economic settings. Doing so raises the overall productivity and resilience of American communities, mitigating the very pressures the pro side highlights. 3. National security concerns. There is no denying that national security is a legitimate priority, and thorough vetting processes are an essential part of modern immigration systems. However, advocating broad restrictions in the name of security risks conflating genuine threats with the vast majority of harmless families and individuals seeking better lives. Moreover, heightened restrictions do little to stop determined criminal elements. Sophisticated cartels or extremist groups often bypass legal pathways entirely. Strong border management and rigorous screening, coupled with international cooperation and intelligence sharing, can address security threats more effectively than blanket immigration cuts. By maintaining robust, targeted vetting procedures and applying them fairly, we guard against genuine risks without undermining America's core identity as a place of opportunity. 4. Upholding core American values. Finally, the pro side suggests that preserving foundational ideals, individual liberty, democracy, and equal opportunity, requires regulating who enters and how they integrate. Yet the very history of these principles shows that they thrive under the pressure of diverse viewpoints. The influx of different cultures, religions, and languages has, time and again, reinforced rather than eroded American values. Think of the countless immigrants who have fought for civil rights, upheld the rule of law, or even served in the U.S. military. Their varied backgrounds have deepened the national understanding of freedom and justice. True preservation of American values does not hinge on limiting newcomers, it depends on ensuring that each individual, whether native-born or immigrant, has a fair shot at fully participating in civic life. By nurturing inclusive education, clear paths to citizenship, and unbiased policy, we remain faithful to what truly defines America. Conclusion: fostering strength through inclusion. In conclusion, the calls for strict immigration limits rest on concerns that can be more effectively addressed by smarter, more inclusive approaches. Rather than restricting the very diversity that has propelled America's growth, we can reinforce national unity by supporting robust integration programs, refining security protocols to target actual threats, and calibrating economic policies to match labor needs. This strategy honors America's long-standing tradition of welcoming individuals seeking freedom and opportunity while ensuring our communities adapt and flourish. Ultimately, national identity is not a fragile artifact to be guarded from outside influence. It is a living, evolving force shaped by the countless people who call this nation home. By leaning into our history of inclusivity and adaptation, we safeguard both the economic vitality and democratic ideals that define the United States.
In light of America's founding ideals, such as freedom, equal opportunity, and the promise of refuge, how do you determine the precise balance between upholding these principles and addressing concerns about cultural cohesion, economic pressures, and national security? Specifically, at what point, if any, do you believe additional limitations on immigration become justified or unjustified in preserving the nation's identity?
Finding the balance between America's cherished ideals of freedom and the need for reasonable restrictions requires a thorough assessment of real-world conditions. On the one hand, the United States has long served as a refuge for those seeking protection and the chance for a better life. On the other, without prudent oversight, we could encounter issues that undermine security and create serious social and economic stresses. In our view, additional limitations become justified when the number of newcomers significantly outstrips the government's and local communities' capacity to provide quality integration services. In other words, if schools, healthcare facilities, and the job market cannot effectively absorb a rapid influx of immigrants, if cultural and linguistic differences grow faster than we can establish meaningful points of contact, then our shared values, like liberty and equal opportunity, are put at risk. These restrictions should never be inhumane or conflict with fundamental human rights. However, for America to remain strong and loyal to its founding principles, it is crucial to ensure that every new arrival can be integrated in a way that respects and reinforces the nation's core identity. By maintaining a careful balance between compassion and capacity, we can protect the unity and vitality that make the United States a beacon of hope and freedom.
We believe that America's foundational ideals, freedom, equal opportunity, and the promise of refuge, must remain the guiding principles of any immigration policy. Historically, these values have fueled innovation and cultural diversity, propelling the nation forward. While we recognize legitimate concerns about cultural cohesion, economic pressures, and national security, these challenges are best addressed through nuanced regulations and robust integration programs, not by placing severe limits on new arrivals. As for when additional restrictions become justified, we contend that the threshold should be set quite high. Problems like localized job market imbalances or security vulnerabilities can be mitigated with targeted interventions, such as improved screening, equitable resource distribution, and comprehensive language and civic education. Closing the door on those seeking a better life, merely out of fear or perceived strain, undermines the very principles our country was built upon. Ultimately, we safeguard the nation's identity not by excluding outside influences, but by making sure our institutions and communities are equipped to help newcomers succeed, thereby preserving the dynamic spirit that has long defined the United States.
Thanks for watching. Now it's your turn. Let us know in the comments who you think won this debate. Don't forget to cast your vote and tell us why. And if you enjoyed this content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. More debates are coming your way. See you next time.